But Brandon, let's close out the podcast looking at the Auburn Tigers. And I know what some of you might be saying, because I think, Brandon, you made the same mistake when you were coming up with our notes. You were like going through everything. You're like, Alabama's last, right? Because they won the national title. It's like, double not so fast, my friend. They did not win the SEC.
Double not so fast. I love it.
It was Auburn that won the SEC, and that's why we are ending with the Auburn Tigers, because they finished atop the SEC West last year. And here's the first thing I want to ask you. When you look at the Athlon Sports preview for the Auburn Tigers, it says this. The equation, and this is for the offense, the equation is simple for Auburn's offense under Gus Malzahn. If the veteran coach has a quarterback he trusts to make plays with his arm and his legs, or his legs, then you can expect the Tigers to challenge for the SEC title. So this is me. Jarrett Stidham is still there. Veteran quarterback, Gus Malzahn can trust to make plays with his arm and his legs. So I'm going to ask you this. Does Auburn, I'll just hit you with the heavy question. Does Auburn win the SEC title this year? Do they win just the SEC West? Or do they finish second in the division? Where do you see this Auburn team with Jarrett Stidham? Can they challenge for the SEC title and actually win it this year?
I think that Auburn can win the SEC West, and it's not because of just Jarrett Stidham. It's because they are probably going to push for one of the best defenses in the country. They have a
gonna rival Georgia?
Very good defense. They could. They're strong.
Because
they're very strong.
Last year we saw phenomenal defense out of Georgia. It just seems like that's what they do in the SEC. They just play defense and use great quarterbacks to try to beat them. I feel like with Jarrett Stidham, last year, here's what I'm thinking. Last year, they got through the West. I'm not questioning that they can get through the West. It's when they get to Georgia, because it's interesting. I'll just get to the schedule right away. I know I'm kind of throwing everything off. They play Georgia on their schedule. They actually play Georgia on Dave Oster's birthday. It's a Saturday, November 10th, at Georgia. Yeah, if they lose that game, as long as they beat Alabama, then they should probably be in the title. My whole thing, or the SEC title. The thing that I think about is that game, I'm circling it right now. I can't wait for it. I'm marking the calendars. Dave, I hope you don't want to do anything on your birthday because I'm watching that game. And the reason why I'm watching that game is because that will have implications on not just the SEC, but that will have implications on the college football playoff, where for Auburn's side, like I said, yeah, if they lose, okay, we knew we had to beat Alabama anyways just to get in for the SEC title. Well, here's the thing. Alabama got in losing a game last year. They didn't even win their conference. Didn't win it. They just got in with one loss. So how's that going to play off if Auburn loses it and maybe has to play Georgia? Because I'm assuming if they lose to Georgia at that point, but then beat Alabama, that we would just be gearing up for Georgia-Auburn Part 2 in the SEC title game. However, the other thing could happen. We could have, oh man, if we didn't lose that Georgia game, we would have been able to get into that game, because what if Alabama beats them and there's this weird thing? Like, oh man, we should have beat that Georgia team. But what about on the other side? What if Georgia falls off a little bit and Auburn beats them, wins their side of the conference, and then maybe has to play a Florida in the title game? Like, that game to me is going to be huge for this season. And if what I think right now is going to play out, Auburn loses that game, then if they beat Alabama, win that side of the title, then beat Georgia, that having a double Georgia on your schedule might be able to help Auburn get to the college football playoff if they can win the West and win the SEC title.
And I see already 10 wins on this schedule for Auburn. I see 10 wins on the schedule, and then you've got the Georgia game and the Alabama game, 2 games on the road.
So you're saying every game besides Georgia and Alabama are wins?
Yeah.
Okay. The only game I was going to ask you about, and I don't think this is going to be a loss for them. It's just interesting. The Washington one, because we're going to get to them later on.
I have zero worry about Washington.
The only reason I ask that is with Washington is Jacob Eason going to be the guy there to start, and how is he going to look with that Washington team? But like you said, I'm not saying that the Huskies win that game. I'm just saying
you shouldn't be saying
I'm
that.
a little interested just because of the Jacob Eason variable to that equation.
Yeah, that doesn't worry me. I think that, again, you look at this Auburn defense.
It's Alabama State that worries you, right?
Oh, they do. Auburn, if you look at this defense, they have a really stacked defensive front. One of the things with them, though, which is why, I think that they could win the West, they also have questions in the secondary. That's going to be their number one question, similar to Alabama. But I think they have a stronger and more experienced defensive front than Alabama, maybe boasting this season, at least on paper here to start.
Yeah.
We are looking at a team that is going to be pretty solid throughout. Jarrett Stidham is your quarterback again. This guy really knows how to stretch the field, go vertical, and he does it well. They lost a couple of receivers to knee injuries in the spring, but they are bringing a couple of guys back. Kerryon Johnson and Cameron Petway are both gone, but you have Cam Martin there looking for a 1,000-yard season, so you've got some consistency there. You've got to replace 3 offensive linemen. There are questions around this team, but I don't think enough to knock them too far from the pedestal where they were at the end of last season.
Just to say, those 2 wide receivers that you mentioned with the knee injuries, Will Hastings and Eli Stove, are the 2 guys that they lost in the spring drills to knee injuries. But, I mean, the thing I look at is, here's what I think about with this team. With all the questions you just said with Auburn, and I know it's kind of a little bit different than Alabama, because I think in Alabama, who we just talked about, they both have Auburn and Alabama, the questions at cornerback or secondary, but I think Alabama has more questions in the other 2 departments than Auburn does. Like, I'm going to read a quote here from the Athlon Sports Preview when talking about their linebacking core. This is Auburn. The biggest concern at linebacker is finding enough snaps to keep everyone content. I don't know about you, B. That is a good problem to have. I would be happy to have that problem if I'm a head football coach. I'd rather have too much than not enough, and that goes with anything in life, mainly money. But the thing that I look at is this team has 2 of the things that you need to win a championship. A stout defense, which I only say that because, they have the questions at cornerback, but they're more solidified, I would say, at the other 2 levels than in Alabama, although Alabama, I think, is going to win every game. And then that Auburn game is the coin toss that we always see. And they have the quarterback, the veteran quarterback, because the thing we talked about, and we got to bring Alabama into this because they're the 1-2 punch in the West. Even if Tua starts, let's say Tua starts because both you and I said that's who we would have. Tua played phenomenally at the highest level, but he's not as experienced as Jalen Hurts. Yeah, Jalen Hurts will be on the bench and kind of be like a JT Barrett was to Cardell Jones, to Braxton Miller, to everyone that took the job before he was given the job, before he graduated. And I just feel like Stidham is more experienced. The defense is a little bit more solid. Injuries can happen, but knock on wood, they don't. I feel like this point in the year, I know it's early, it's only June, so it's not like we're anywhere near the season. Maybe I'm overhyping it a bit, but this could be a very special season for the Tigers. And if they play well every game and they go out there and they solve some of these questions, mainly in the offense, they at least have the 2 pieces, defense and a veteran quarterback, that they could be a team where it's like, oh, they're making the playoff this year and they're going to the playoff from the SEC.
I think you could be right. I think that what we saw last year in the Auburn-Alabama game was that Auburn was able to stretch the field a little bit on Alabama, and then they wore them down with the run. And I know that was with Kerryon Johnson, but Cam Martin, I think, can do the exact same type of thing. I mean, he averaged 6.1 yards a carry last year. He didn't start, the games. So, and that's in limited time. Yeah. So there's a lot of hope for this Auburn team, and I know that other teams on their schedule that will be, and fans of those teams that are on their schedule that are watching this and saying, you a-holes are just completely counting out our teams. Well, there's a reason to get excited about that last game on the schedule. Because of last year that Auburn won that game, and two, because it's happening again this year. Same game, same time is happening again this season, and it is most likely, as we speculated earlier on in this preview, going to come down to that last game. Who wins that last game could, especially after what we saw last season, could be not only the SEC West winner, but could be going to the playoff.
So let me really quick run down the point totals or the scores from last year for Auburn. 41-7 they win. 14-6 they lose. 24-10 a win.
For the 14-6 that was to Clemson.
That was Clemson. 51-14 they win. 49-10 they win. 44-23 they win. 27-23 they lose. 52-20 they win. 42-27 they win. 40-17 they win. 42-14 they win. 26-14 they win. 28-7 they lose. And then they lost to the real national champions, if you ask the state of Florida, 34-27, Central Florida. My point, though, is not that. My point is, I know that first off, Georgia or Auburn fans are going to say, whoa, Ricky, what are you talking about this Georgia game? We blew them out of the water in that first game. Yeah, you did, but that was at home. You beat them at home, then you went to a neutral site and you only put up one touchdown. So I wouldn't say that you get the best of the Bulldogs in the end because they went to the national championship and you lost to the other national champions. Can we call them that? The other national champions in college football. But my point that I was really getting at is there are three scores that were the closest. 14-6 against the Clemson team where they lost. 27-23 at LSU. That game's going to be home this year. And then the Iron Bowl, which will now be on the road this year, 26-14. Their closest games. Every other game, every other SEC team, every other non-conference game blew them out of the water. Wasn't even close. The score shows that. And I think the same thing will happen this year, where most of these games will be blowouts. The only difference is that Washington game will not be as close as the Clemson game and will be a W. The LSU game might be that close, but will be a W for Auburn because it's at home. And the Alabama game might be a loss, and that's the only one where I can't give a win or a W because it's in Alabama. Auburn can win in Alabama, but that's the only game throughout all these schedules, I think, out of all these previews where I can't give a win and a loss, and it's the truest to a 50-50 that we have.
I can agree with you on the Alabama game. That one right now is almost a toss-up. It could go either way because both of these teams, they've got some really good pieces. They've got some definite question marks, certainly in the secondary for both of them.
And they're solidified at quarterback, no matter who Alabama picks.
But I think, though, that you're overlooking a little bit Texas A&M and Mississippi State. They have new head coaches in both spots. They're bringing a different scheme and a different culture to both spots. They're asking different things of their offense and their quarterback in both spots. We're going to see a Nick Fitzgerald who hopefully is a little bit more accurate, goes back to 2016 where he went 21 touchdowns, 10 interceptions instead of the 15 and 11 that he did this past year. You're going over to Texas A&M where, again, you've got Starkel and you've got Mond, and it's, who's it going to come down to there? Mond, I believe, the better runner. And you've got Jimbo Fisher, a guy who knows how to work with quarterbacks, knows how to make them winners because that's what he's come from. I don't think that we can count those out. I don't think that we can look at them as being, okay, maybe they're wins, but they may certainly not be blowouts. That's where this SEC this year may have a different feel than other years. You have new coaches here now. You've got a big new coach in terms of Jimbo Fisher. You brought over a big fish into the SEC West. And now it may be more interesting and more tight than any year we've seen before, at least in recent history and in recent memory, because these programs, and I'm not saying that they're going to be just turned around immediately, but you're high on Mississippi State. I'm high on Mississippi State. Texas A&M may push for 9 wins, maybe, if we're getting excited. LSU is going to coin flip. Not sure how they will be. This is going to be the top 4 to 5 teams. We're looking at, I think, some good competition up there. Now, I say that, and I've tried to talk these teams up, and they're just going to fall flat. But now that I've said it, but that's why it's Alabama and Auburn, that last game for sure. But you never know. We could finally be surprised during the regular season.
Well, and for me, this is my consistency. Although I'm high on Mississippi State, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Throughout this entire preview, I know it's been over 2 days for us, but over this entire preview, have I said that before these last 2, have I given any of the other teams in this conference, in this division, a win over either Alabama or Auburn?
No.
That's where I think they're the upper echelon. And that's the thing I will say is, yes, Jimbo Fisher's a big name. Yes, I expect them to kind of stay where they were, maybe 6-7 wins. However, that game's in Auburn. They're going to show strides this year. It's not going to end up in the win column. I'm not going to say it's a 51-10 blowout, but it's not going to work for them in the win column. The Mississippi State one's interesting because if Alabama knows anything, and this is for Auburn fans, that's what I'm saying, is if Alabama fans know anything, Mississippi State can play well at home. That game's at home. So I'll give Mississippi State I don't know if I want to say puncher's chance, but maybe you can upset. Maybe you can catch the Tigers sleeping on a game like that, because you got to think coming into that one, Auburn will be coming off of Southern Miss, which should be a 72-0 blowout. Nothing against Southern Miss, but that one should be blew out by the first quarter. Send in the second stringers. Stidham's going to the locker room. He's changing, getting his water because he's done for the day. That's how that game should go on in my mind. Yes, Mississippi State can't upset them. Do I see it? No, because, the thing with them is, like we talked about their coach, first Power 5 job. It's going to be different. It's a different level of competition, especially in the SEC when you're playing Auburn and you're playing Alabama. I think this season comes down to, in the West, I wouldn't be surprised if both Alabama and Auburn are undefeated going into that Iron Bowl game, which would be amazing. I would love to see that because, I love to see it. It'll probably be 1v2, undefeated versus undefeated. Winner gets to play Georgia. For Auburn, it would be a rematch against Georgia. And here's what I can see happening. Either with a win or a loss in that Georgia game for Auburn, whatever you want, that's where you'll put it at. But what I can see happening this year is Auburn beating Alabama, that being the only game the Crimson Tide lose. Then Auburn go into the SEC title game, beat Georgia, because that's, spoiler alert, who I think will win the SEC East this year. And think about this. What if we got a situation where In this situation, I'll say Auburn goes undefeated. So they beat Georgia twice. Auburn ends up being not just the SEC champ, the number 1 seed in the playoff. Alabama's only loss yet again is to Auburn. National semifinal game, 1v4, Iron Bowl Part 2. You're smiling because you know you want to see that. Like, that would be amazing. I am already concocting movie line stories in my head with this season. I could see that happening. Auburn going undefeated, being the number 1 team. Alabama only having that 1 loss. Iron Bowl Part 2, 1v4 in the national semifinal.
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you a question. What if you say that, you say that, and I honestly think, and this is...
That I'm delusional?
No, but I would love to see what the fans think on this one, is that you say that if Auburn won, they go undefeated, they're the number 1 seed in the playoff, Bama could be the 4.
Well, that's just off of what we saw last year.
Yes. Is Bama only the 4 because it's Bama? If you flip it around and it's Alabama that goes undefeated and Alabama's number 1 in the playoff and Auburn had a chance to possibly be the 4 because that'd be their only loss, is the committee then looking elsewhere because it's just Auburn?
No. And the reason why I say that is... It's just for clarification, it's a 1-loss Auburn team, and their only loss is
you just flip it. You just flip your scenario.
No, and the reason why I'm saying that is it depends on how close Alabama is, but that's not a huge determinant in this case. It's the Georgia game. They win that Georgia game in Athens, they could lose in Alabama. And they could be Alabama of last year, where it's like, hey, we got a pretty good resume here. We only lost 1 game, and it was like, if they keep it close, and it was close. Now, the thing is with the committee that we see from year after year, what's going to be the hang-up this year? Last year, last year the hang-up was, we're talking conference titles. We had the debate. Do you need a conference title to make the playoff? Should you need a conference title to make the playoff? That's all we talked about towards the end of the year, because everyone's like, I wouldn't put Alabama in. They didn't win their conference. I'd put Alabama in. Look at who they played. What will be this year's thing that we just stick on? And that is what we talk about every single week. There's going to be something.
Always is.
And right now, I want to say yes, based off of what we saw last year. But we all know how the committee is. It's not a computer. It's real people. They change their minds left and right. I would love to think it'd be the same thing as last year, but there will be something else this year that makes the committee go, I know we did that last year, but what if we tried this? And I don't know what that is because I can't read the future.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just interested. I just wanted to see what your response would be.
Any final thoughts on this? Because I think we've kind of hit. I think we've hit everything.
I do too.
For the Auburn Tigers. So this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think about the Auburn Tigers down below. Auburn fans, I also want that. Give me both sides. So let's say you go undefeated, you play Alabama in the national semifinal game 1v4. Are you confident you win that game? And then give me the flip side. If you're on the other side, you're a 1-loss team, didn't win the conference, you're playing an undefeated Alabama team in that semifinal. Does it change at all, knowing that you lost to them before, won to them before? I would love to know what you think down below in the comment section. And that's going to do it for the Primetime Podcast. If you are on any of the podcast services, you're in for a doozy on this one. I think this is going to be an over 2-hour podcast. I think this is one that, because of file size, it's probably going to be split up into 2 parts on the website, because there's a certain file space before you got to break them up into 2. So that's how long this one might be. So thanks for trekking it out. If you're on YouTube, thank you guys for checking out. Check out all our other previews as well. Housekeeping here at the end. Make sure to check out patreon.com/MostValuedPodcast to help support the channel. Make sure to check out our store to get our MVP t-shirt. You can get that link down below in the description, or at mostvaluedpodcast.com, where you can also catch everything for MVP each and every day. Also, please go on to iTunes. Please go on to Apple Podcasts. If you have either, Give the Primetime Podcast a 5-star rating. Type in a little something about why you like the podcast, why other people should watch and listen to the podcast. It would really mean the world to us. Thank you guys for watching on YouTube. Thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.